Good evening. Welcome to the second meeting of the Charter Commission for the year 2021. It's been such a long day, I'm not sure I know what year it is, but I believe it's 2021. We have a little more abbreviated meeting tonight because we're having a little bit of a late start. So if you feel like we're galloping along, we probably will be. But there's always the next time, and the next meeting will be, is it December 14th? A quick 2 weeks away. And so what we don't get done tonight, we'll do at that time. It's my real pleasure tonight to introduce three guests who are over in this corner, that triumvirate right there. Kathleen Murphy, the superintendent. I think most of you, or probably even all of you by now, have met her. Sitting to her left is Jim Richards, who is the present president of the Concord School Board, and sitting behind Kathleen is Jack Dunn, the financial officer. We especially invited them to our first meeting of input because we needed to hear from the Concord School District about what is exactly important to them. I'm sure that they're going to have a very stimulating discussion for us. Poor things, they've worked so hard all day long. And I do have to tell you, last night I was doing emails and writing to our absent member who sends his total regrets, and that's Bill Ardinger, who was out of state on a previous trip that just couldn't be changed. So I'm writing a note to Bill to thank him for some things he'd done. And then I looked up in the corner and I could see the name Kathleen Murphy. And then I saw her after that, above that, Jack Dunn. I said, good Lord, they're sending me emails. I looked at my watch and it was 5 minutes of 10. And I thought, I should have been in bed 10 minutes ago and they're still up doing emails. So that gives you some idea of the length of their day. I hope that's not the case every day. Well, you don't want to hear me speak. Kathleen, would you like to tee it up and lead it off? Or you can do it in any order you want.
Oh, yes.
The only thing we will ask of you, that's okay.
Yep.
I can get home without it.
I'll grab this one, Mike, if that's okay.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I need to tell you, I have watched a couple times our previous meeting. It's been on as part of the regular education rotation, and I was pleasantly surprised with the audio, because sometimes with the school board thing, that has been a little bit, lacking. And so if everyone tonight is careful to use their mics, I think that we will continue to have that audio up, so that the people in the community who wanted to see what's happened after it's happened, that they can do exactly that. So, ladies and gentlemen.
Would you like to start? President Richards? You do the.
She has notes, so I'll be more brief. First of all, I'd just like to thank you for this invitation to come and speak with you, and to thank you for participating on this. The Charter Commission. Several of you have been on the prior commission, and I'll thank you for that, because as a president, and I've only been the president for about a year and a half now, but I've been on the board. I was in that first class of district people that were elected. I was elected in November of 2013, and I'm from District A, which is wards 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I have served on the board since then, and I just want to thank you for your insight and your the hard work you put in the charter that has been in effect for the last 10 years, because I've lived with it during that time frame. I know there was discussion with regards to the districts. I think that they work quite well. As I said, I'm in District A. I know prior to that there was at large. There's plus and minuses in both. However, I think one of the things that the district has going for it, and that I've seen over the years change, is the fact that it allows just about anybody in that district to run for the school board. And increasingly, as you see outside groups bringing in money for local elections, not just school board, but other elections, and I think having that ability so that any member of our community in an area can run is important. Along those same lines, though, I've pretty much self-funded my campaign back then, but I think that I've never had to fill out anything with regards to the financial disclosures as running for school board, and I think we should. I think, you all have to fill out your financial disclosures. I think that's one omission that I would say was left out of the last one. And then overwhelmingly, what I really would like to talk about is the ability of the board to fund its projects, to reach out, and I'm sure Mr. Dunn will talk about this, but bonding has saved this community a tremendous amount of money, and the flexibility and the speed at which we could bond, I can say, saved us millions. And a specific example that I will look at, and the fact that this board is so unique and has this this ability to react quickly is so important. And that had to do with the closing of the steam plant. When that steam plant literally closed overnight in just a few months, because of the way that our charter was written and the way that the board was able to work together. Some of the members of this commission will remember exactly that time because they were on the board. But we were able to implement a program to heat the schools, to be able to fund it, and to start that project in less than a few months, so that we never had to worry about the classes being out of heat. And it was and that's not what other folks could do. I know the state of New Hampshire, which was also faced with the exact same thing, had to purchase an external heating plant to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars, and use that for 2 years until they could implement and get the retrofitted heating systems in. We did it over the summer, and we had it ready for the kids coming back by that fall. That was a tremendous ability that saved the taxpayers of Concord, I would say, and Mr. Dunn can probably give me bigger numbers, but I would say at least several hundred thousands of dollars. And that ability and that flexibility and breadth of our charter, I think, is really critical. And I would ask you to, retain that. I know some people don't like the fact that the school board has that power, but it is such a great power in saving money for the community. And then when it comes to accountability, we are elected. Believe me, I've run 3 times, and I am accountable to the voters that are in the city. They come out and talk to me. They express their views. I have to earn their votes every day, and even though I'm from District A, I represent the students and the taxpayers and citizens of the city of Concord. So thank you once again for this opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you, Jim.
Great.
Jim, could I just step in and ask a question before we move on?
Certainly.
One of the thoughts that people brought up to me is increasing the school board by 3 people and making it a 12-person board. I know putting this to you on the spot, you can't possibly respond, but would you think about that and ask around and get the opinion of people in your domain?
I will. I plan on coming back to sit in the audience of a few of your meetings so that I can observe it, but I will ask that a question. I will comment on something that some other people have said to me too, which is regards to having school board members associated with elementary schools. And in my district, the elementary schools that I have represented have been both the Beaver Meadows School and the Krista McCullough School, because I'm in wards 1, 2, 3, and 4. The problem with that is 1, 2, 3, and 4 is the wards are set up such that population is pretty much balanced throughout them, and it changes quite a bit. And we just went through a redistricting within the city. I don't think parents or students would be served if all of a sudden they have to redraw the school lines to try to conform to the election lines. I think that would be more of a negative if all of a sudden I found out that my child was no longer going to this elementary school, but was going to that elementary school because, so that there could be a school board member that's associated with that school. I've visited all of the schools, and I've spent time in all the schools. And yes, my kids went to the Beaver Meadow School, and I'm very familiar with that, but I represent all the schools, and I think every other board member has that same sort of approach. But I will ask that question. Thank you, Glenn.
Good, good to go.
I'm good.
Well, thank you for having me. I think this is on. Thank you for having me tonight. Appreciate the invitation. I consider myself the newbie. I've been here 18 months, so I've had a lot to learn in a very short period of time. So my comments might be more of a perspective that I can bring to you from having served in other districts with different forms of organization and structure. So I think I'll lead in with that. But I looked at the charter. I've read it several times. It was one of the first documents that Lyndon handed to me when I came and said, "You must read this." And so that was one of my first homework assignments. And it's very impressive. It's a very impressive document for a number of reasons. I like how specific it is. I mean, it's very detailed, it's clear about the roles of the school board, and I think that's important to maintain that as you go through and confer with others. I think that's helpful. It's easy to read, by the way, and easily understood by the reader, so those are important. The other thing is, as I read it, it aligns very nicely with state law. In terms of all the RSAs that govern the responsibilities and roles of school boards, so it aligns nicely. So we want to make sure that that you keep that in mind as you review and revise as necessary. I think the structure that you currently have, quite frankly, my colleagues across the state, and I've been around for a while, as many of you know, and they're very jealous of this organization and the structure of your board because of your autonomous. And when they're dealing with multiple boards in cooperative school districts, all with their own set of agendas and all having a different core values, and systems of belief, trust me when I say, well, our board is autonomous, and there's 9 members, and that's all I have to deal with. So they are quite jealous. I want you to know that. The other thing that I read when I was reading it was around the ability for people to petition or to change the charter. And I thought it was really interesting that the school board has the right to do that. So, for instance, I think Jim alluded to the ability to be flexible and to respond immediately. I would want you to keep that ability of the school board to decide if a charter revision was needed. I know there was a 10-year sort of a timeline, but their ability to do it at any time, I think, is important. One of the things that we all have learned and we take away from the last several years is how things have changed. And so with the board, you want to think about how do you give them flexibility in order to function, to be efficient, to be responsive in a very timely manner. And I think that's important. So keep that in mind when you're reviewing that. I don't really have a position about whether the board should remain autonomous or all that. That's a kind of a political issue, so I'd like to remove myself from that. And I try to be apolitical as much as I can. But I do want to share some of my experiences. My first experiences were with town meetings, where people came together, sat in usually in a gymnasium or in a large room. The meeting was often run by budget committee members and school board together, and the issues were debated. The problem with the town meeting is it represented such a small population of people. And after the debate, maybe 100 people in the room of a very large community. I lived in Derry for a long time, and so Derry's, has 35,000 people at that time. And, you might have 100 or 200 people in the room to vote on budgets and decisions around the operation of the school district. It seemed not to be very representational. It might be just certain people. We often saw town meetings stacked. What I mean by that is certain groups came to fight for a particular issue. And quite frankly, it was often people who were employed there, because in those budgets were people's salaries and their benefits, and so they had a stake in the game, right? So you would see a town meeting that would be heavily, the participation was heavily towards employees, which I think sort of left the community not as engaged as you would like to see them. The second experience I had was with Senate Bill 2. Senate Bill 2 is a little bit of a different system. The school board still develops a budget, develops warrant articles, which I think you're all familiar with. Those warrant articles are usually around contracts. They could be around significant projects like schools or equipment that might be substantial in cost. And so they develop the warrant article. They then go to a budget committee, which reviews it over a number of evenings, followed by hearings, which is staged by the budget committee. School board is just really in the audience. They're not participating. It's a budget committee's budget. It actually is removed from the hands of the school board to become the budget committee's budget. And again, the experiences have been very limited participation in the community, and again, it became meetings that were based on people who had a particular agenda item and not looking. I think Jim always says it all the time. Our board says it all the time. They look at all the kids, all the needs, and not just specifics. So I think that's sort of a downturn in that. Then they go to a deliberative session. So after the board develops a budget, the budget committee may or may not approve it, by the way, could go in saying they don't approve it. The citizens, whoever's at that meeting, can either raise or reduce the budget by 10%, which can be disastrous in some cases, and in other cases, if they raise it by that, that's probably a plus, right? If you're looking for additional funds, so it doesn't provide the kind of information that I think it was intended, and then people go to the polls and vote on it. And again, I've had meetings of deliberative sessions and budget hearings with 10 people there. How do they get the information and be able to make decisions about budgets and school projects or equipment, and not having the information? And people vote their pocketbook, and I get that. I understand that. That's people's lives. It's important to them to be able to have the funding to be able to take care of their family. So I get the whole idea of voting your pocketbook, but it's also very frustrating when you know that perhaps they are voting in a certain way because they don't really know what's in that budget. In Concord, the members of the school board know that budget inside out. Jack does a calendar. It would, if you saw it, you'd say, "Oh my God, how are we going to do this?" We have an incredible number of meetings, walking our way through a line after line, all of the items that impact the budget, so that these folks are accountable. They know their budget. They know their schools. They represent all of the various districts and wards in the community, and I think it's really a healthy way to do it. And I've always said, if the decision about if Jim doesn't make a good decision, he knows he's smiling behind that mask. You know what happens. The people have the authority to vote people out, and that's the democratic way, right? So I think that the way it's structured right now is I know it's unique for the state of New Hampshire. It absolutely is unique, but I think it's a system that works very well. You know, I wanted to talk a little bit about a school project. You know, when I've done several school projects in my career, and you have to, at first it was a supermajority, 66% you needed of the vote to be positive in order to pass a bond issue. I mean, that's nearly impossible. That's almost 7 out of 10 people who come and vote would vote yes. They've since reduced it to 60% now, but even still, 60% is a big bite in terms of trying to get folks to vote on a project. Even when schools, I mean, there's been schools in the state of New Hampshire that are in dire need with systems, roof systems and other things really in terrible shape and not being able to pass a bond. The Department of Ed has had to step in and order schools to be repaired because they were not safe for children. I've been fortunate not to be in that case, but I know how hard it is to address the needs of a district, especially as it relates to building projects and bonds. So again, Concord has the ability to research, develop, and bring forward projects to the community to meet the needs of our kids, and I think that's a plus. I have to say something about the board. And I've served several boards in my career, and I have to tell you that this board takes their work very seriously. I think they're all very familiar with the charter. They know their roles. I think it's very clear the responsibility that they have on their shoulders. I've heard several board members say how difficult it is during budget time, and how they lose sleep because it's such a difficult decision, because they know the impact that that's making on families. And but they take their work seriously. I was sitting down looking at, they have 7 committees that meet almost every single month. Executive Committee, Policy, Instruction, Finance, Capital Facilities, Community and City Relations, and Negotiations. I'd challenge any board to do that. I would challenge any board that I've ever worked with. On top of that, they knew that there were specific issues. They immediately addressed them. The first one was racial equity, and we have a standing advisory committee that we meet every month. Board members serve on it to address issues around racial equity in our school district. We have also recently formed a special education parent group. That was a very important goal of our board. Immediately, that goal came out in our retreat session. We recognized it as being important. They were able to respond immediately to have a parent group. They now meet monthly and share their concerns and issues with the folks in our student services department, and it's been very positive thus far. And lastly, there was an issue that the board needed to have addressed. They wanted input from the community, and so they formed a discipline study committee to address discipline, to examine what happens, who's doing it, why is it happening, and then also the other piece to it was that whether the SRO officer was a viable option for the high school. So immediately they established a committee that went into effect, and it's been working since last spring. And we're hopefully getting ready to make some recommendations to the school board in preparation for their budget. So I think the structure and the organization delivers a product very quickly and efficiently to the community. And I think it's because of the way it's structured here in this community. So just my thoughts. All the other business in the charter I'll leave in your hands.
Jack, you up?
I'm going to take this down for a minute.
Thank
It's
you.
a little easier, and I thought maybe hearing. I'll say a couple things. First, my history. This is my 13th year being involved in the district. First as a school board member for 3.5 years, and then it'll be completing my 10th year, July 1. So I look at this in Jim's role, and I look at it as an administrative role. On the fiscal autonomy side, I have found the advantages of this to be excellent on both the school board side, and when I was first elected, I had no idea. As I said, I still blame my wife for this. Anytime she ever tries to get me something involved, I say, I'm in this job because you started that. So I'm done. But it's been a wonderful opportunity. But you realize quickly the weight that's on you as a school board member once you're elected to this, and realize the power of the position. And I think anybody who I served with when I was there and what I've observed at these boards, they get it. They get it fairly quick. They might come in with certain things and have ideas, and they ultimately coalesce because they get the greater good of and the power of the position. And being on the administrative side, as Kathleen mentioned, her colleagues are envious. So are mine. I will tell you that. And we've hosted New Hampshire school business officials, school business administrators here, have toured them of our schools, and they are blown away at what we've been able to do. So I speak to that from the autonomy side, both of the board and as an administrator. Now I want to go with how that has resulted in given results. I'm going to go back to 2009 when we talk about actual dollars. HVAC, there was a new HVAC that was needed at Runlet. We were looking at a program. There was money that the state had, 0% through the American Recovery Act at the time because of economic stimulus. So that money was all divvied out, and there was a town that had recently voted for a new school and got a 0% rate. Problem was the state told them they had to go back out and vote again, and they were concerned that the school would get shot down because people would think they were building a second school because they had to go to a town meeting or deliberative session and trying to convey that after they had reached the threshold she talked about. They wouldn't. Guess who swooped in and got the 0%? The Concord School District, because we were able to take advantage of that and do the HVAC. Second project I'll mention, the elementary consolidation. I think we all remember the financial downturn after 2008 and what the economy, the construction market, the labor market was looking like in 2010. I cannot say that building 3 schools at one time would have passed in the community based on the economic times. I mean, people thought we were crazy to build $62.5 million to build 3 schools at one time. It was probably one of the largest public projects in the state at the time. Those schools came in $7.5 million under budget and had no additional tax impact because of planning of the board, the fiscal autonomy, and that engagement between the administration, the board, the community, and I don't want to fail to recognize the city officials as well, who are always involved in whatever we do financially. There's a lot of communication that happens on the administrative side to make sure the taxpayers are protected and both sides understand where things stand, especially as you look at the city as a master plan. It's not just the school district, so it's a big picture. I'll also highlight the steam to gas, as Jim had mentioned. That was budgeted at $9 million. We came in at $7.8 million, and that's because we were able to do it within 18 months. We got a fantastic rate. We had the board then vote and reprioritize that million and put a partial roof on the high school and a partial roof over the 3rd grade wing at Broken Ground. Not only that autonomy, then we had the board go and take advantage of the low interest rates. So your 10, what we still call the new schools, granted Beaver Meadow before that, 30 years old, was the new school. But believe it or not, those schools are 10 years old. So the call date came up on the bond. We had gotten 30 years, for the 30 years, 3.625% for a rate. We refinanced to 1.43 for the final 20 years, saving taxpayers $450,000 a year or $10 million over the next 20 years, all because the board was able to engage at a time, set up its vote. We worked with the same financial advisor, both the city and I work with. We collaborated and said, time to go. And we did, and locked in. So that's just a little bit of the financial picture on projects. And as you can tell, for us, it's not typical. It typically had been on a trend about every 8 to 10 years to do something. A little bit more most recent because of the Concord steam project, and we did also take advantage when we did that of the rates and did some technology in buses and roofing. But that autonomy is key to saving money. At a minimum, you're probably looking at, if you had to change that and go out to town vote, you're probably looking at 1/4 to 0.5% increase in interest costs, just because of that. That's what was said by our financial advisor, so something to consider. And again, it all came out on timing, and being able to go at any time rather than wait for a town meeting is powerful. The other thing, I also want to just recognize the former Senator Feltz was also helped in with the board head discussion and getting us $1 million because we were denied for building aid. But I wanted to recognize that because it's not just city officials, it's also been some of our local representatives at the state level that have helped as it relates to this. And then I'll move on now to number 11 in your charter, which has to relate to the budget and talk about timing and having the 5 votes to pass a budget and 7 votes after that, a supermajority, as well as the 10-day notification. I agree with all of it. If it's higher than state law, good, it should be, because the board itself should be held to a higher standard, because you have 9 people making a decision for a community of 44 million. And it recently came up because the adequacy grant that we get from the state was increasing, and they offered 2 options. If you cannot get your people together in your community to vote, what happens is it goes back to the tax rate. So what that do, it starts the heart monitor to get a little wacky, and the rates go up and down. Because of your autonomy, the board was able to pull that together. You explain the logic to those 9 board members, and they're able to appropriate that money. But in the statute, it says 7 days notification. Your charter says 10 days. I agree with, it should have a little bit longer notification. And if that's something that is either recommended to change, I'd recommend you keep it, because it should be held to a higher standard and transparency for viewing this stuff. There's nothing wrong. An additional 3 days doesn't hurt. And to shave 3 days, it doesn't seem to make sense to me. We have to do our due diligence as an administration, and as a board. So just in case people start reconciling the state law and your charter, I'd be concerned that might be something that's saying, oh, state law is this, we can lower it to 7. I think there should be a higher standard. And then finally, as it relates to something that was lost before my time, was an appointed treasurer and an appointed clerk, who now have to be elected. So both the treasurer, who gets a stipend of $300, and the clerk that gets a stipend of $300 for the district. I've started to think about the ramifications. You have a clerk that just is done December 31st. You have a new clerk that's coming in. I start reading the process for this charter commission, and now the clerk, who isn't normally involved once a year as it relates to budget or when bonding, there's going to be a lot more things that they may need to be involved in. Depending on who you get for that clerk, are they going to have that commitment time? And that same thing becomes with the treasurer as well. I mean, we've been fortunate over the years, consistency with the clerk and former school board officials that have ran on the treasurer side to be able to have those meetings. But I think that if there's any way to bring back the appointment by the board of a treasurer and a clerk, I think it would be somewhat helpful going forward. Again, fortunate the last 10 years, but going forward, have to see. And that's
Well,
all I have.
That's all you have?
That's
Yeah. We've got some people who are going, oh my goodness, I didn't realize all that. If you served on the board, yeah, you have. If you paid attention, maybe so. But there's an awful lot of information there from all 3 of you. So I guess what I'd like to do is just ask if there are any members of the commission who would have a very relevant question of any of the 3 people. Yes, go ahead, Ben.
So I have a couple of questions, one for Jack and one for Jim. Jack, my recollection of the school bonds was that in addition to other issues, the timing of those allowed us to take advantage of, I've forgotten the formal name, but was it the Build Back
Build America bonds.
Build America bonds from, at that time, and that's another example, I think, of flexibility.
Yes, going back, that was the elementary project. They had incentives to subsidize the interest rate. That was one. And then we had building aid. If we had to wait for a town vote, we would not have gotten building aid on those buildings, which was $28 million, if I'm remembering right. So that was a critical thing. We were the last one in line before the moratorium kicked in. And then when you look at the HVAC, that was called the Qualified School Construction Bond, and that was a 0% interest. So what they would do is you paid it, and then they rebated it to you. That's how we took advantage of it, and that district couldn't do it because they were so afraid to have another vote. But yeah.
Jack, do you remember that it was September, and we were trying to decide which school to build first? We were going to build one school at a time, and in October, the state told us that building aid was going to end as of December 31st. We voted to build all 3 schools and saved us a fortune.
$7.5 million.
In no way we could do that by going to the public.
During those economic times, I think it would have been very difficult to get that to pass.
Yeah.
And then I joke around with Matt Cashman every once in a while and say, I think he'd be painting those old buildings right now. and to
Your memory's
put,
better than mine, Clint. I'd forgotten that part of it.
And did you have a question for Jim?
Yeah, and so, Jim, on the issue of ward voting, one of the points you made is that, and I don't know that we've seen this, and I hope we won't see it in Concord, that you've got, substantial amounts of money that could start going into school board races. So you have one advantage in the fact that you've got a smaller pool of people that you're pulling from to vote within the wards, but is a concomitant potential problem with that it would be easier to influence the outcome of a district election with substantial funding than it might be if the election were citywide.
That's a great point, and perhaps that could be true, and I won't disagree with you on that. The one thing about having a smaller district or an area, and I know that some of the people who live around me and have done the same thing, is that I can knock on a lot of doors, and I think that's probably, and people can get to know me in that time frame that we're out there, and I think that was one of the, to be quite honest, that was one of the most educational few weeks for me, as well as one of the most difficult few weeks for me, but I had to earn it by knocking on those doors and listening to all the people in my district. Their concerns reflect a lot of the concerns of the general community, but I still can't imagine not knocking on those doors and doing that face-to-face with the parents, with the citizens, with the taxpayers of Concord, so I will live with either way, however this commission works with and all. But I just thought I'd bring that particular perspective out because I am one of the people that are elected from a district. So, but thank you for that observation and the question.
And you gave me a different view on it because I had a bias in a different direction. So thank you. You've helped educate me tonight.
Well, hopefully just from my experience, and there's an awful lot of experience. I sit here as one of probably one of 6 or 7 people who can speak of their experience on the board, but it's been extremely educational for me each and every year that I've been on it. And I will reiterate what Jack said as well, is we have an outstanding relationship and have had an outstanding relationship with the city. We talk all the time about budgets. We talk about how we can improve the community as from both a school district point of view and then as far as the communities that the city councilors and the mayor represent. And it's been extremely beneficial. And I think, our schools are very integral and a very key part of our community. And I think that's one of the strengths that I see in Concord that I don't always see in other locations. So thank you.
Yes, Tracy.
I have a question actually for Jack about, so we obviously have a Runlet Middle School issue with the building coming up. What are your anticipated needs in terms of autonomy with that? Like, how is that, you think, going to help you going forward? What does the future look like for being able to fund Runlet?
Well, there's a number of things going on. The school board, starting back to '05, before my time in the district, had started to plan and earmarks 5% of its budget towards debt. All right? And by maintaining that 5% has resulted in $10 million that's sitting into a renovation fund for Runlet right now. And what we do is we utilize that to stabilize the taxes. That's one. Two is also communication with the city and being able to understand what their debt level is and what projects they have and when they should go and when we should go. So that coordination is happening. But that autonomy also to work with the financial advisors and say, okay, based on the market, where trends are, what the architects are telling us about projected growth, because right now things are a little inflated. I mean, if I were to look at this in my view right now, I'm saying I want to have everything ready to go for like what happened with the 9/10. Not that I'm wishing for that, but when things soften, it's time to go. And if you have to keep getting votes every year to wait, I think that can be a real struggle to take advantage of an opportune time to build. Does that help?
It does, thank you.
Are there other questions? Yes, Kate?
I think this is mostly for Jim. I'm sorry. Your thoughts on the way that board members are currently elected, that the whole board never turns over at once. It's in three, thirds, so to speak. So are you a fan of that? Is that helpful? And most other boards I've seen turn over or have the potential to turn over in their entirety after an election.
So that's an outstanding question, and I absolutely am in favor of that. I will tell you right now that, some of you know me, I have a master's in finance, and let me tell you, I took that first year learning how to budget with the school and with the state, which is different than the private sector. The fact that I could ask questions of my fellow board members that had been through that process before was absolutely invaluable. I am currently the president of the board, and the reason that I'm able to even and hopefully do at least an acceptable job in that is because of the mentorship that I had with the prior president and vice presidents of this board, who, we're set up now that, as you come on the board, you are a chairperson of a committee, you are a member of a committee, and you learn that. And that experience and institutional learning and that continuity that comes through is extremely strong in making us get up to speed really quickly on some very difficult issues, more difficult than I had, ever thought when I first ran. And I think that the fact that we only turn over a third at a time really helps build that knowledge and strength, and I wouldn't change that at all.
Okay. Well, I can't thank you enough. What I was hoping for was bluntness, and thank you, you delivered. No, seriously, we don't want to sugarcoat anything. We want to say, what works and what doesn't, and I think that we just absolutely, we can't thank you enough, because that'll give us some guiding lines and our North Star, if you will, as we move along. And now, I'm going to tell you all to go home. No, seriously, you've had a long day, and even though you might want to stay, please, go home. You've delivered enough for today. We cannot exhaust you, and it's with our great thanks. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank
for
you.
inviting us.
Thank
You're
you.
very welcome. And I just
Thank you for what you do.
mentioning the RSA that came up. I made a copy. There's 15 copies, so when you start your discussions, you have that as well as other documents. Okay?
Well, let's pass that around right now.
Thanks, Jack.
I'll take one, I'll take two, one for Bill. Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you. Put your high beams on, don't hit any deer.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, I feel like I've got 4 agendas out here. We are happy to have some people here tonight, and my question is this. Does anybody want to speak? We'll do a sign up, and Charlie? Okay.
You don't need to sign up, Charlie. I think you're
Yeah,
the
we
only
know
one.
who you are, but,
All right,
yeah,
well, for the record.
yeah, okay. While he's doing that, I'll give you a sneak peek ahead. Next thing we're going to do is the adoption of minutes, and then we get into some really heavy discussion. And it may appear helter-skelter, but that's the way discussions are at the beginning until we find our path and get it laid out. And so, I will introduce Mr. Russell. Glad to see you. Welcome.
Pleasure to be here. Some tough act to follow with some good comments. I've served on, I haven't been elected to the council or to the school board. I haven't run for the school board. But I've served on 5 or 6 nonprofits for the last 30 years, and Community Action, Concord TV, the SPCA. So I've seen the committee systems, and I think the committee systems work. But I was out and about on election day, and I talked to a few people, and I learned, I thought there was 6, but there's actually 7 committees according to Superintendent Murphy, and you have 9 people and on the committee, on the school board. And I noted, went through it, that 3 people serve on 4 committees, 3 people on 3, and 3 on 2. And, you know, it's, plus they have a regular school board meeting. I never hear too much about adjourned meetings that run a second night. But it seems like somebody that's essentially with the pay, which I'll speak to, is a volunteer, might be out 5 nights a month. And some of the people that have been on the board can understand that. And it seems to me that that's an awful lot of work to spread around to 9 people. And when I heard it was 7, well, that goes beyond what I even thought. And so my thought would be, you overwork them. I've been on some nonprofit boards where there's not enough people to share the work, and you beat the people down, they become overworked, and you become what's called board burnout, and you become very ineffective. I'm not going to, don't know enough to really say that about the school board and the committees, et cetera, but it seems to me you're asking an awful lot for people to come out 3, 4, 5 nights, probably for a couple of hours. The other thing is it probably takes away the time that they would spend if there were reports they had to read to get up to speed to understand that. So I'm leading into, we have 9 on the school board, we have 14 plus the mayor on the city council. I believe the school board budget is slightly above, although some people would beg to differ, much above what the city spends. And so I think really the school board size needs to be increased, and whether it goes to 11, 13, or 15. 13 would seem to be maybe the optimum size from my view, but also it's an unlucky number. So, and then the question is, how often do we have, 6 to 6 ties on boards when somebody's not there and the motion doesn't pass? So to the extent you want to stay away from 13, then for the fear that you're going to have a tie. If it's a tie, it doesn't go, or if somebody's absent that day. So, and to the extent that you want to expand it, Jim Richards' comment about going door to door, I think is important. I think I was a proponent, spoke of having district elections so that people would be more in their neighborhoods and wouldn't look at the thing, oh my God, I got the whole city, I can't go door to door. To the extent Bill, board member, Charter Commission member Glan spoke to about money coming in, to the extent you put in some financial requirements, reporting requirements like the city has, so you know where the money is coming from. So if all of a sudden certain groups, without naming any that I could probably think of, decided they're going to load up and decide they're going to dump money in and support somebody, then you have that coming out and the information is out there. The press and others certainly, and other candidates can bring that out. So to the extent I always hear, and maybe it's more from one party than the other, let's keep educational local. To the extent you're going to keep your 3 districts and elect 4 from each of those districts, or 3 from each of those districts, that gives you your 9, and then you would have, say, 4 at large. To the extent the board chair spoke about continuity. If you look at the city council has 4 at-large councilors that are elected to 4-year terms, but you always have 2 that are holding over. To the extent you want some institutional memory to pass along, you might want to look at large being 4 years as opposed to 2. To the extent that Jim Richards thought 3 years was the optimal length. I spoke to the city clerk, and she said, we have to print a lot more ballots in even-numbered presidential or gubernatorial years, and a lot of voters don't want to take that second ballot, whereas if you have your school board elections on odd-number years, you can put the school board members, as we just saw in the recent election, on the same ballot. You could save some money for, I guess, the city, who is the one that prints up the ballots. I'm not sure the school board has ever picked up the cost of those ballots or any cost of those elections, so, which I get.
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. It's inside baseball that I wouldn't know. But, the second issue is compensation. I guess it's $1,000 a year. Am I correct on that?
Yeah.
$1,000 a year. I don't know when that was set, but $1,000 isn't like $1,000 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or 20 years ago when this was set. In my quick review of the charter, the school board doesn't set its own compensation. It says we'll pay everyone on the board what the city pays their council members. Seems to me, you know, if you're independent, why are you tying your compensation there? That seems to me that should definitely go. I think the council has something up there that says if you're going to increase the compensation, you can't do it for the board you already sit on. You have to do it before the elections to take effect in the next session, the next election cycle, or next cycle. Manchester, I believe, I did a quick scan, and somebody can do their homework. I have ideas, and it's nice that when I come out with an idea, they don't say, Charlie, good, you're going to be the head of the committee. The committee's here, I'm giving you the ideas, you take the ball and run, thank you. So my quick perusal was Manchester pays its school board members $4,000 a year, Nashua $5,000 a year. I believe there are 12 wards in Manchester. When I looked at the election results, I believe each ward elects a school board member as well as a city council. They're both independent bodies, obviously. And they have a couple at large, I think, in Manchester as well. I've heard through the years with negotiations that be it the teachers or another union group or the firefighters or the police come in and say, well, we're only at 50% of what what they're getting someplace else. So, you know, to the extent you want to set some reasonable compensation, whether it's set in the charter for the next 10 years or whether you set up a procedure to that, but it seems to me there needs to be some comparison of why are we only paying a paltry $100 as opposed to $1,000 as opposed to the $5,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 in the cities south of us. You might want to look at Keene or Portsmouth or some of the other cities, see what they're doing. When the state rep salary, by comparison, was set in 1880, it was $100, and it was 1/20th of what they paid the governor. I assume the governor's making a lot more than the $2,000 a year, so to the extent that you want to do some sort of comparison of what was the superintendent's salary when we set the $100, $1,000 a year, you may want to use that as some comparison or ratio or another indicator. If the board were to, just for the sake of numbers, if the board, school board were to have 15 members at $5,000 a year, that would be, my math major works, degree works, $75,000, which I guess is less than 1 cent on $10, 1/1000th of what the budget is. So to the extent that I'm not looking for a job to run and get paid money, but there are people out there who have good experience, they're retiring early, be it from the state or be it from private business or even on their own. There are people out there that I might say might be more apt to run if they knew they were getting some compensation. I know somebody mentioned out at the polls, said, you know, what I'm paid isn't enough to pay my babysitters. So, I mean, Yankee frugality can only go so far. It's time to look at some reasonable compensation for what the people that are doing this work. I'm familiar with the city of Lawrence. My brother lives down there. He's run for city council. He tells me they pay, he hasn't been elected because it's a pretty diverse community, but they pay $15,000 a year down there for city council. Well, that's Massachusetts. That's a different world. It's a nice retirement if he were to get elected as well. He's retired himself. A couple other comments.
Are you getting towards the end?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll save my ideas for next time. Any questions?
Oh, no, I didn't
I'll
mean
be
to.
back.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
I'll be back.
But we do have a few other things.
Okay.
I think that you have certainly given us a number of things to consider, and that's why I let you keep going, because one seemed to go into the next, and there were several different issues. We really thank you for your input, and yes, I know you will be back.
Okay, 7 o'clock next meeting?
Yes, for the next
I have
four.
a question for Charlie
Okay.
before he leaves. You talked about 2 issues, but I think you actually talked about 3, so let me make sure I understand. Sorry. I think you actually talked about 3 issues, which is 1, increase the size of the board. And then as part of that, is your suggestion that school board members be elected in off-year elections, what we'll call non-national elections?
Yeah.
And then the issue of compensation?
Yeah, that kind
Okay.
of slipped in there, sorry.
Thanks.
I'll save that for next time, thank you.
No, we thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Charlie.
Great. Okay, moving on our agenda, because we turn into pumpkins at 9 o'clock. Approval of the minutes from last time. I think that you have a copy in paper now, and you may have had one prior to it. My question is this, do you see any things that need to be corrected, changed? I noticed one thing. It said we adjourned at 8:37. I think it was 7:37, because we started at 6. Am I nitpicking? Okay.
I thought it was later.
You thought it was later?
I think it was.
It was late.
I think it was 8 something.
You think it really was?
I think
Yeah.
it really
You
was
were having
that.
that much fun.
Yeah.
Well, I must have had my clock on a different time zone. Okay, forget I said anything. Is there anything else that anyone would want to suggest? If not, then I would wait.
We need a vote to approve the minutes.
I would make a motion that we approve the minutes. And I would be happy to second that.
Okay, is there anyone abstaining? Nope.
We haven't voted yet.
No, I haven't got there yet. Okay, those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
Is there anyone with a no or an abstention? The minutes are now officially approved and ready for, how shall I say, advertisement. Okay, the next thing is going to be a little bit hectic, but now that you've heard from 3 people from the Concord School District, and Charlie as a member of the voting residential Concord people. And we asked you to do a little homework last time, and I did mine. I didn't do it on the sheet, but I did mine. And what I would like to do is, if you've got something on your sheet, especially in the top part, that came from someone else, somebody asked you something, somebody suggested something, that's what I'd like to hear. Is there anyone who's got a topic out there that we haven't heard yet tonight? Or if someone from the public mentioned one of these two, please say so. The one I had was Charlie's compensation increase. Someone spoke to me about that, and I thought, oh boy, let's see what our relationship is with the city if we stay tied with them. So there are some issues there. Has anybody else got one that's a little bit, go ahead.
I don't have anything different, but the people who spoke to me were concerned about retaining the financial autonomy of the board. That was the most consistent.
And they really understood it.
Well, I think they generally understand that the board has autonomous approval and disbursement of the budget.
Okay,
Untied to the city,
Okay.
and that was seen as a positive thing.
okay. Anybody, yeah.
Yeah,
Clint.
I had two, we had to fill out financial forms for this committee. And although I think it's a great idea, and I think we should pass that on to school board members also. But I think 3 times, maybe a little excessive, just before the vote, just after. I just think that's a topic we should,
All right, you
do
were
it.
saying,
Yeah.
right, some kind of
yeah.
responsibility for financial disclosure, perhaps on a more limited basis.
Yeah.
I'm looking, yeah. Go ahead, Tom.
So, some of these may be a bit of a can of worms, but I'm going to put them out there because I heard them. And Tracy heard them as well. So, talk about Merrimack Valley combining with the Concord School District. And, please don't kill the messenger here. This is just
No,
stuff
we understand.
that I've heard about. Another one that was, had my eyebrows raised, Concord Education Association's thoughts on bargaining contracts with the city versus the Concord School District. So those
Okay.
are two that
Yeah,
have 2 more, but they've already been mentioned.
How would that work, Tom?
I have no idea, Bill.
when
In
you
fact, I was going to ask Jack his thoughts on it, but I didn't think that tonight
yeah.
it would be the time to get into such depth about something.
But can I be sure I understand? Are you saying that someone is in favor of, thinks that would be advantageous for the union? Is that what, I'm not quite sure what you would.
Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong, but as we sat here in this room and did a forum, it was brought up as a question that, in the form of a statement, that some members of the CEA
Yeah,
had indicated that they may be interested in bargaining or talking about bargaining with the city. And that all went in line with fiscal autonomy questions
sure.
and
Okay,
okay.
all right, well.
It was during the Concord Patch Forum. There were some loaded questions asked.
correct.
Okay,
That's interesting.
So if it's there, it's out there.
Which is on, we can all watch it.
yeah,
It's on
right,
the-
no, well, the thing of it is, if it arose in your,
Yeah, it'll come up.
right, right, in your district meeting or forum that you had, okay.
Right.
Okay, well, there are lots of misconceptions, and there are lots of myths, and there are lots of folks who will have a grand idea, but somehow it's not relevant or related or even accurate. So we have to sift through that. But we do entertain all suggestions. And while I'm on that topic, I have to tell you a great victory yesterday that happened. I was so pleased. About 4 o'clock, I got an email from Lyndon, and she said, "We're up and running." And then I realized what it was. The email that I had talked about last time is alive and well. I felt like, the telephone had been invented, what has God wrought or something, because we now have, I'm going to have to say it right, Charter Commission info at SAU8.org. You'll have access to this, but what that is an avenue in for anyone who wants to make suggestions, comments, or ask questions. I'll repeat that, Charter Commission info at SAU8.org, O-R-G. And so anyone, go ahead, Lyndon, you're the expert on this, you're the one who made it happen.
All emails that are sent to that email address come to me,
Yes,
and then I would need direction from the commission about what you want me to do with each of them. But
Exactly.
Just so you know, anyone who sends an email to that email address, I see it.
well, right now you have a Concord Schools info thing. And then when we wrote the book about Edwina Jakowski, we also had another one. So this is a beautiful avenue. I mean, I realize that not everybody uses email and not everybody uses technology to the extent that most of us do. But I think that that's one that they could certainly get help on. If it's someone who couldn't physically appear and they wanted to put in a suggestion, then fine, that's still another way for that to happen. So that was what we had in mind but we had to get it hooked up. And I'll tell you, that's just part of the cooperation that we're getting from the Concord School District and the people right here in this building. Kathleen has been absolutely super in supporting our effort, and she understands, as you can tell, how important the charter is, and she's anxious to do. It's like, people will all say, well, just tell me, I can do anything, I'll do anything for you. Well, when I told her 3 things that I wanted, they all got delivered, and they're all operational. So we have a good relationship, as you can probably tell tonight. So getting back to suggestions, there will be some that probably won't be feasible, or there will be some that won't be relevant. If people are going to come in and start talking about the Merrimack Valley School District as part of the Concord School District Charter, I mean, there's just no relationship there at all. So I think now you're beginning to see, if you didn't already, through your campaigning or some other way, that there are going to be a lot of ideas. I had no idea. I'm looking at 15 or 20, and some of them may be intertwined, as Charlie suggested with his. There might be 2 or 3 things. We have to be careful, because when the question goes to the voter, it has to be limited to one topic. You can't have anything that's all wrapped up, so, well, I'm voting for this, but I don't like that. It has to be on a single topic. So as you can see, we're going to get an awful lot of suggestions. Bill?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like, based on comments we've heard this evening, and also I think that other comments that have shown up, either by statements that have been made to us or some of the ones that were raised by the members of the administration or Mr. Russell today, that there are probably 3 or 4 significant issues that we ought to assign separate meetings to, or at least a fair amount of time at a meeting, so that, for example, if the issue of board autonomy is on the table, that's an issue that should be advertised for a public meeting on that issue.
Yes.
The others are, I think, whether school board members should continue to be elected from wards as opposed to citywide, whether school board members should be elected in what I'll call off-year elections, non-national elections, whether the size of the board should be increased, and there's the issue that Clint raised about financial disclosure and also compensation. I think financial disclosure and compensation could be covered in one meeting, and it may be that we don't necessarily need to assign a complete meeting for one of these issues, and there might be other issues that come up as we go along, but it feels to me like at the moment those are at least identifiable issues that we know are on our plate.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think what we need to do is begin to make our list. And if you made a list and you want to give it to Lyndon before you go, That will help us to see the kinds of things that are out there. For example, if there were 4 or 5 that came in with increased compensation, or a number that came in with financial disclosure, we could begin to make the list. And then, as Bill says, as time goes on, we have our next meeting, I hope, by the time we leave here, will be somewhat planned. But by the time we get to the one after that, I think that we will have exhausted the must-do, and then, therefore, it opens up wider to the general public, and we would have more Mr. Russells here. And we would get, and as soon as that begins to peter out, that we seem to have the bulk of the suggestions, then we would do exactly what Bill is. But it's the sort of thing, our meetings are going to be very fluid, because we never know who's going to show and what they're going to say. I mean, it's not like the legislature, where a bill has a number and a name and a fiscal note and has been vetted, and you control when it's going to be heard. We can probably control when we will revisit it again, but we just don't have the power to schedule in a way that some other organizations do. So you're going to have to be very fluid. We're still building that airplane as we fly it, and we will be probably having meetings that will start, and they'll go as long as they go with one piece, and then we'll quickly switch over into the work session mode and keep on. So if you can agree, and I guess the word is expect the unexpected, that we will have to hear suggestions from the community, gather them together, put them in bunches or relevant materials, and then begin to have our work sessions on them. And all of this is up against having them well-formed and in a form for our preliminary report, which is due the end of April, isn't that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Betty, that one of the advantages of identifying an issue for discussion at a meeting, and I'll just use the ward voting issue as an example, is that we may want to collect a good deal of information about how ward voting has occurred, what the voting patterns have looked like, how many votes have been cast for people in those particular districts compared to, say, a citywide election. I'm not trying to limit in any way what sort of information would be necessary, but simply that we could ask the school board in advance of a meeting to collect, or the clerk to collect that kind of information for us, so that we'd have some actual information rather than just sort of anecdotal thoughts about ward voting versus citywide elections.
Yeah, we want to work off from real data. Nancy?
I also wonder if, and I think you were alluding to this earlier, that if the agenda posts that at least the anticipation of a topic is going to be X, then people who are particularly interested in would show. We would still need to be flexible. If people show up who want to talk about a different topic and they're there and there's time,
right,
then you would like to accommodate them. But I think that's another reason to at least try maybe to have a topical focus.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. But we have to know what topics we have before we, line them up, so to speak. Well, all this leads into the last two things that I have on the agenda. And the first of that is a discussion about next time's meeting. We've said all along that we want to hear from the clerk or clerks, and that should be finalized. And that's a very important meeting, because there are portions of the existing charter that are no longer applicable, and we need to purge those sort of things, and any other remarks that they have. And so I think that the big item, the stars of next time will be our clerk or clerks. And then I've had an offer already from the absent Bill Ottinger. This issue about the treasurer, and Tom's got nothing to do with you, my dear.
So I take nothing personally.
But the issue about the treasurer is one that has a history and one that has some legal components. And I think that Bill is prepared to come and bring that before us. And we'll have him sit there because he will be making a presentation. And then I think he may be involving some other folks as they gather material to bring back to us on the treasurer issue. The other thing that Bill will be doing is that basically he'll be modeling how we would like people to come and make presentations. Sometimes people don't know exactly how that's done. Now, I know I let Mr. Russell go on quite a while tonight, but he had a lot of things to say, and there was no one else waiting. But we will have to, at a later time, if we have a number of people here who are anxious to speak, we'll have to exercise some kind of time limit and invite them to come back or come back on the night that we're saying we're going to discuss your topic. So with those two lead-off items for next week, first the clerk or clerks and then Bill, and then we would go to public input if there is any. And what else would you like to try for us to do at that point? Or, well, I've got another suggestion. Here I am building the airplane as we fly. By the time we get to the next meeting, we may have a list from your contributions. We may have a list of topics that will be preliminary, but it will certainly help. If you don't have something to give Lyndon tonight, if you could just send it to her, and we could go through that and begin to formulate the areas of interest and suggestions. And I've searched and searched for a word. I don't know if we call these things items or proposals or what we call them. So help me out. Give me your name.
So when I sent mine to Lyndon, and when I did, I questioned the word proposal because some of the things are thoughts.
Yeah.
They're ideas. They're topics of possible discussion. Proposal to me means something a little more formal that we're going to put forward.
That's why I didn't feel comfortable with it.
And so, given the two items that I brought up, I would think they're more topics of discussion.
Topics for
We can
discussion.
do whatever you want to do.
Or issues for
Or
discussion.
issues.
Okay.
I might suggest that the next meeting, it seems the topic that everyone has brought up and that was brought up by Mr. Russell and was brought up even by Jim Richards is that we address the school board makeup, the school board terms, the school board lengths first, because there doesn't seem to be a lot of issues on the autonomy of the budget or the bonding. And so we tackle the things that seem to be weighing more on people's minds earlier.
So what nomenclature, what name would you suggest that we use when we gather these, whatever they are? What do you want to call them?
Discussion topic.
Discussion topics?
Yeah. Of the
Yeah,
school board
I think,
composition.
I mean, if we've got the clerks coming to the next meeting, it feels to me like what we ought to do at the next meeting is to decide a sequence of discussions in future meetings. For example, as Tracy points out, maybe at the first meeting in January, we discuss ward voting or
At large.
or the ward versus at large, and then we've got to discuss the timing of school board elections.
Things pertaining to the makeup of the
Yeah.
school
And maybe
board.
board size.
Okay, well,
Right.
that's exactly what we're looking for. You know, I wasn't about to say how we're going to proceed. I just want you to all feel comfortable with the way we will do it. But at the same time, I'll say again, we're still building that airplane, so expect the unexpected. We will have a format, we will have an agenda, but there will be portions of it, time-wise, that we cannot control. And so you just have to be, fasten your seatbelt, hang on, and we'll go as far as we can and pick it up the next time.
Well, I think one of the other reasons not to have a discussion, a substantive discussion of any of these particular issues is December's not the best time to get people to come out to a meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking
Good
about,
understatement.
11 days before Christmas, 10 days
Right.
before Christmas Eve. It's not going to be high on people's agenda. Nobody has anything else to do in January, so.
Yeah, well, the thing of it is, I've had two very interesting conversations with people, one by phone and one in the grocery store. I've always said that when I was on school board, you had to be prepared to be shanghaied at the banana counter because, there was always someone finding you. The phone conversation, the person expressed a number of topics to be discussed, but he wanted anonymity. He didn't want his name attached to it. And I guess I have to ask you the question. I see no harm in our respecting his anonymity. Okay, and so when it comes up, I'll just say this has been presented and we'll deal with it just like any other. The other one is a person who probably has a lot of ideas and will need to have a timer. So we can expect him, I'm sure, and hopefully it won't, it may be in December, it may be in January. But I'm hoping that by the time we get to January, we'll have most of the fodder, we'll know the territory that needs to be plowed, we'll know what it is we have to do so that we can get about it in the fashion that we've talked tonight. And I think that I'm happy with leaving it at that. And if you want to give things to Lyndon, then we'll sort of organize it a little bit so it isn't quite such a hodgepodge of topics to be discussed. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
All righty, then moving on. I have material from Jack concerning the financials, but all I want to do is give you tonight an idea of, in the charter, it definitely says that the school district will be responsible for our costs. Now, some of them are going to be subtle and sort of shoehorned into regular costs. For example, Dawn is here tonight at the request of the superintendent to be our recorder. And so I don't know how the school district takes care of Dawn, but anyway, that will happen. And then another thing is that our presence on the website, we don't charge for that. We've just sort of wiggled our way in and we're now there. Our announcement of meetings is on the website. That sort of thing is there. Our relationship with Concord TV is piggybacked on the school district. But there are two other things that we may need to have help on. Although we have 3 attorneys here on the board, 3 that I know of, this doesn't mean that we expect these people to work for free. We're going to lean on them heavily when it comes time for the preliminary report to go to the state officials. But it's also possible that it would be important to have an independent legal opinion of the product that we have before it goes, just to have somebody else. Now, whether that would be our new clerk, Patrick, or whether it would be someone totally independent. But there is the distinct possibility that that would be a charge that would come between this commission and some kind of a contract or agreement with a legal person. And in the same fashion, I'm going to strongly recommend that this group needs to have a staff person. And I've been laying it out last week and again this week. I'm totally biased, I'll let you know that right off. The person that I would choose to fulfill that job would definitely be Lyndon, for a number of reasons. First of all, you've seen the proliferation of materials that she's made available to you. Many of them, before we even started, our original little black folder with the yellow on the front, and everything that's in there. The other thing is that she has a knowledge, because she's been here and been through the files from last time. She has the knowledge of where information exists. I don't even know if it exists, and if it does, I don't know where it is. So I'm willing, but I'm not able, because I just can't find this stuff. And I wouldn't ask any of you other folks to do that. And so, at some point, tonight or next time, I really would like to have some kind of a discussion and maybe even a motion to write out a job description, one's already been started, and to have a staff person. Now, I've done a lot of talking. You want to react to that?
Well, my reaction would be, what does the superintendent feel about us taking time from her secretary? And does Lyndon want to do it? And what kind of hours are we talking about?
Okay, first of all, Lyndon has already been doing it because I think she likes this kind of work.
Yeah.
Second of all,
Don't you, Lyndon? Yeah.
I got that impression. Second of all, this would not all be done on school district time, whatever her hours are. And so she would be billing us for those hours that were spent, weekends, evenings, whatever. And I'm sure that we'd have an honest accounting. It's going to be a fuzzy area. It's going to be fluid, but Kathleen is okay with this, really okay with this. And so if there are things that can be done within her regular workday, well, fine. You know, if all it is push a button because she's got the group thing and she can send something to all of us, you know, in 5 minutes, that's not going to be a backbreaker. But if she spends 2 hours on a Saturday afternoon researching things and some of the things that we're bringing up right now, then those would be billable. How many hours it would be? I think it would be well within the budget.
I
That
couldn't agree
doesn't
more.
answer-
Sounds like a great idea.
Do you have
Well-
a dissenting vote, Lyndon?
I'm sorry?
Do you have a dissenting vote?
Now's the time to negotiate your rate.
Well, this has been awkward
Just like the
because,
school, this is like our compensation of the school board's compensation,
yeah, well,
right?
she's been doing this work for, you know, for 5 weeks since back when we were first elected. And she was doing it out of the goodness of her heart because I kept saying, you know, we're gonna have help. I can't do this. I don't know where this stuff is. One of the things that she has sent to you already is the record of all the voting from 2012 until recently. I didn't know she had that. I was gonna research it back when I was campaigning, and sure enough, she already had done it. Now, only she would know that it had been done and know where it was, and it's invaluable.
Lyndon, did you send that to us?
I handed it out, or Betty, you still have it.
Oh, Lordy, Morty, here it is. Yeah, that was the problem tonight, is trying to fit it all in. I'll take the extras after they go around. I've been assured from, watch the flag, okay. I've been assured from Jack. He's given me the data, which I'll pass out next time because we're almost there, turning into pumpkins. So I can't see that there's a problem here. And if it makes our work more efficient, more comprehensive, more thoughtful, then I'll tell you, I'm all for it. So, would someone like to make a motion that we engage Lyndon as a staff person? And is there somebody who wants to spend a little bit of time with me working out, finishing the job description and the compensation? Clint, can you and I do it?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll make the
And-
motion that we retain Lyndon, subject to
A limit?
approval on a job description.
Oh, yeah, okay, you're gonna approve the job description. And then we can even put in an amount certain, not to go beyond that, if,
Well, yeah, we should know, included within that, we should know what the rate will be.
yes, of course. All right,
I second that.
Set it high, Lyndon.
okay, so, the proposal, no.
It's a
The
motion
agenda
up.
item that we will bring back will have a job description, will have a rate of compensation, and will have probably an outside limit, and it's only if we guess totally wrong that we would have to come back to you. How many, is that in the form of a motion?
Yes.
Yes, it was-
And it's
Okay.
already been seconded.
Yep.
All right, those in favor would say aye, please.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstain? It is done.
Betty, can I make just a really quick comment? I just want to assure the commission, I've discussed this with the superintendent. I will be extremely careful about the work that I do for you during my regular work day. My first obligation is to be her assistant, and that is my job. I can do and have done things within my workday, posting of meetings on the door, those kinds of things. They're very short, quick tasks, but typically the work that I have done for you and will do for you will be evenings and weekends. So just so you know.
Lyndon, if you would, if you want, after the meetings, if you want to, when you prepare the meetings, or if Dawn does, and you want to send them to me, then I'll look at them and provide any, red line changes that I think ought to be made, and then we can circulate them to the commission.
Perfect.
Okay, another system solved. Thank you very much. I mean-
I would like to make one more motion. I would motion that Lyndon bill us for back hours she's worked on weekends.
Since the beginning, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll second it. Okay.
Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Right, yeah, no. We want to be fair and honest.
Tom.
Tom? Okay, all right. The last thing just said closing remarks, and the only closing remark I had was how happy I was when that Charter Commission info line was functional yesterday. I got so excited, and I thought, well, why am I excited? I am excited because we now have a conduit in for people who can't or won't show up here, but they've got still another choice, and that is they can send a letter. I have one person who wants to send me a letter at my home address, and, I'll function it on to you. So we have this blanket of clouds that's over us that always says we need to be very much aware of our openness to the public recording. Is there anyone else who'd like to make any closing remarks?
I would also thank the monitor. We've had two articles calling people's attention to the meeting. So that's another step towards everybody knowing what's going on. So thank you.
That was
great.
another one of my
Yeah.
big joys
That's
yesterday.
very helpful.
Because I actually sent the original over. You asked me a question and I answered it. And then I said, we can keep sending you stuff. So I think that we have a good relationship already. and I think both sides will win. And that's a good negotiation when both sides win. Well, with that, yes.
One more thing. I just wanted to let everyone know that I have reserved this room every Tuesday through June. So you can set your meetings, they do need to be on Tuesdays, if you want to stay within that parameter, but you already have the room.
Great, thank
Great.
you.
We have scheduled through February 22nd, so we would need fairly soon to put the rest of our meetings, of the meetings through June, on your calendar, and I can get them posted on the website.
Thanks, Lyndon.
Great.
Okay, and the last thing I'm going to do is apologize for so much paper, but we don't have the luxury of the little computers that we can all do. So we're back to the old age, but some of you prefer paper. I'm one of those who does, just like I like a book, not my Kindle. And so we're going to have to put up with paper. But generally, it will be backed up by something on your computer. Any other last questions or concerns? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So move.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, folks. We only went over by 5 minutes.
Well done. Wow.
Combine those issues.